Just got allowed into the room. This is the Nashville Tableau user group. I believe we're on vert number 20 of our virtual session series. Thanks to the pandemic, we've been virtual pretty much ever since, and we're glad to have you here. We've got a full agenda for you today. As per usual, we're following our format of a community spotlight, 2 speakers, trivia, and talking about either next month and also job opportunities, either whether you're offering or whether you're looking. In detail, our community spotlight here in the next few minutes will be given by Michelle Holden from Toastmasters International, followed by Brent Lodge, or Lodge. I didn't check with him before. Sorry about that, Brent. Clarify when you come up. Which one is it?
Lodge.
Lodge, awesome. He'll be giving us a business value use case with TabPy. That's something I and several of my colleagues are quite interested in. And then we'll have a presentation from Ben Lumbert and how you can use Starburst and Tableau together. And then we'll be covering various things across the Nashville area, such as job opportunities, again, looking or offering. With that, let's see. I want to welcome Michelle Holden. She is a friend and fellow Toastmaster. She's also a coach and owner of Theater Force, an executive coaching business here in Nashville, Tennessee. She has a master's degree in strategic leadership, organizational development, and is certified by the Protocol School of Washington as an intercultural expert in both etiquette and protocol. She is also DISC certified. I can attest to the fact that she is a seasoned Toastmaster, and regardless of your situation, whether you need a moderate amount of help or a complete overhaul, Theater Force will leave you better than you found it. And she'll be talking to us today about what Toastmasters International is and why you might be interested. And I will stop the share. Michelle, the floor is yours.
Michelle, it looks like you're on mute. But one thing before we start, I love Toastmasters. Toastmasters is such an incredible organization. I'm super plugged into it. Nick, I had no idea that you were talking about this today. Oh, this is such a treat. Okay.
Well, feel free. Yeah, stick around.
Oh, I will.
All right, let's get this on full. All right, and we'll take this way down. All right, if we're all ready, let's get started. So many times, first of all, thank you, Nick, for that wonderful warm welcome. So many times people think, why Toastmasters? I've heard the name, I don't know exactly what they do. And let's face it, that is the most old-fashioned name ever. And that's because Toastmasters is over 100 years old, and a guy named Smedley decided to get together because 100 years ago, when someone said, hey, will you give a toast? What they were really saying is, would you give a little mini speech? And people haven't changed that much. People don't like speaking now, and they definitely didn't like it then. And there was a lot more emphasis and pressure on you giving the perfect toast. Anyway, long story short, Toastmasters could easily be called the Say It Better Club. But why Toastmasters, and what's in it for me? Because let's face it, all of us are super busy. And the only thing that you're going to make time for is if there's a pretty big what's in it for you. Let's see. Sorry, it's giving me a little grief here trying to switch. I've come up with 3 things, and I probably could have come up with 12, but I can come up with 3 things that really work for you and the what's in it for you. The first one is you're going to gain superior communication skills. That is my absolute promise to you. Promise you, you will be way better after you join Toastmasters. And by the way, relatively quickly, because you find out tips and tricks right away. The second thing is you will acquire leadership training. You're thinking, what? I thought you just told me Toastmasters was about communicating better. Well, no one's going to follow a leader that can't communicate. And I can promise you this as well, that Toastmasters is where leaders are made. And you will find out a lot about leadership as well as communicating. And then thirdly, this one is so critical. You're going to give and get feedback without getting crushed by it. So often when your boss goes, okay, it's time for your 360 or your annual checkup and we'll see how you're doing, or quarterly, whenever it is you do it, let's face it, we all dread it. Okay, but you never think that's going to be a good thing. It's like the dentist, you have to go, but you're not sure you want to go. And I can tell you that you will learn how to take feedback and give it way better than you ever did before. There are 6 things that you will learn as far as having superior communication skills, because what's in it for you? You guys are all in IT. Why would you want to do this? Well, the first thing is you're going to learn to plan and run effective and efficient meetings, because you're going to say, we were just talking about this before this meeting started, you're going to learn to say in a shorter amount of time, concisely what it is that you want to say. You're going to eliminate the, what is that meeting about? It's going to be clear communication, clear and concise. Also, you're going to create stronger sales pitches. And some of you care about sales pitches and others say, I'm not in sales. In fact, I would hate being in sales. I've got a news flash for you. If you and your family are trying to decide what you want Friday night for dinner, you want pizza and everyone wants hamburgers, you're a salesman. We're all selling something. You need to get comfortable with the fact that life is full of sales. And if you're selling your idea, your plan, your pitch, you're a salesman. You're also going to form stronger relationships with your coworkers. Just like we were just talking about a second ago, all of a sudden you're sitting down with people in person and they say, let's go for hors d'oeuvres, let's go for drinks. And you might be thinking, and I'm a little uncomfortable with that because I haven't done that in 2 years and I have no idea what to say to you. You're going to learn how to communicate extemporaneously and on the fly. Where else might you need that? How about you're in the middle of a phone call or in the office and someone catches you off guard and says, hey, Nick, you want to speak to that for a couple of minutes? And you're thinking, not really, I didn't plan on speaking. You're going to learn how to handle those moments with a lot of grace, a lot of finesse, and it's going to make you appear more confident than you are. The bottom line is you're not going to be thrown off your game and flustered when someone throws you a curveball. One of the greatest parts about this club is learning how to communicate extemporaneously. In our club, we call it table topics, and every meeting has it, and it's where you learn to speak on the fly. You have no idea what someone's going to ask you, but you're going to learn to speak for a minute on the fly. And it's the most loving, supportive group of people you have ever been with. So getting nervous would be a total waste of your time. I'm blocking my screen here, but Toastmasters is where leaders are made. This is where we learn a lot of different skills, not just communicating, because you have to go through what we call pathways. And when you go through the pathways, there are 11 of them. You can specialize in something. I want to learn how to coach. I want to learn how to lead. I want to learn how to give better presentations. I want to learn to be a little bit funny. There are 11 of them, and you can work your way through all of them. I'm on my 4th one. I thought Toastmasters was just about speaking. What are all these other things that you're talking about? Well, they all tie in together, but I mentioned 6 of them here. It's going to build your confidence. And this is not a man or woman thing. Everyone needs confidence. But you'd be surprised how often men come to me and say, I have confidence or I had confidence. How do I maintain it? And believe it or not, there's a very easy answer, but I'm not going to get into it here. You will learn to build confidence. You'll learn how to network better. We all have jobs now, but maybe we won't have a job next week or next month. How do I learn to network? The time to gain those skills is really when you don't necessarily need them. If you're job hunting right now, that's all right. This will also help you, but it's great to learn how to network when you don't really need it. It's going to teach you to plan and organize meetings from start to finish. I don't know about anybody else, but there's nothing worse than being invited to a meeting and you're not sure why you were invited. You're not sure what you're supposed to contribute. And you get there, it's sloppy, it's a free for all. And you walk out and go, that was a glorious waste of my time. There's an hour of my life I'm not going to get back. You need to learn to plan and organize meetings. If you're going to invite someone to something, you darn well better have a plan. It would be like inviting them to your house for dinner and saying, I don't know what's in the cabinets. I mean, help yourself over there. You need to learn to be organized. It's going to teach you how to sell your ideas better, develop the skills to lead other people, and develop the skills to share your vision. A lot of times people will say, Michelle, what do you think leadership is? Well, you're only leading if someone's following. That's the first thing. And no one's going to follow you if you can't clearly articulate your vision, if you can't speak clearly and concisely, if you're not trustworthy. These are all things that you learn through Toastmasters. But most people, now I'm going to get to the third part, feedback. They hate it. I'm from New York, if you can't tell by how quickly I speak. But Ed Koch, who was the mayor at one time, used to walk through the streets of New York and he'd say, "Hey, New York, how am I doing?" Some people, of course, being New Yorkers, would be like, "Ed, you suck." And other people would be like, "Ed, we love you." And people in the mayor's office would say, "Ed, why do you do that? Why don't you just ask us and we'll tell you?" And he said, "Because you won't tell me honestly. You won't give me that objective feedback." And feedback, my friends, is growth. Without feedback, we don't grow, we don't become better, and there is no avoiding it. Sometimes I'm not a big football fan, but my husband is, and I've got 3 sons and a daughter. Actually, my daughter is more of a football fan, I think, than anyone in the house. But I try and picture guys running out onto the field doing their own thing. Can you imagine a professional athlete telling his coach, "You know, I'm a pro now. I don't really need feedback"? This is ridiculous. He'd be kicked off the team. Tiger Woods has a coach. We just finished watching the Olympics. They all have coaches. We never get to a point where we are not coachable. We can always use a coach. And I don't know why people feel funny about going and getting help as if they have some problem. There's no problem if you need a coach. I want to leave you with a thought and really think about this. What price would you pay to be more comfortable in your own skin? I'm not saying I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I can give you a million of my flaws, but I can tell you this. There is no place, including the palace or the White House, that I would be uncomfortable, because I understand communication. I understand how to speak comfortably in front of people. And I understand that it's a skill that must be maintained. It's really funny, but if I skip a couple of Toastmasters meetings, I might sound okay to everyone else, but inside I feel a little bit of that nervousness. And it's okay to be a little nervous as long as your butterflies are flying in formation. But really, if you want to be comfortable, this is a skill that has to be practiced on a regular basis. Some people could say, "Well, I don't want to do that all the time. I don't like the pressure of thinking I have to do something constantly." Well, you need to eat today. You ate yesterday, right? And you're planning on eating tomorrow. There's some things like eating and sleeping that we do all the time. We also talk and communicate every day with people in our personal life and our professional life. Not being good at speaking is not okay. You're a product. That's how I want you to look at yourself. And you need to protect your brand and you need to grow your brand. You see, you're your own person. You're super unique. And what I need you to understand is that how will anyone know who you are, or what you're made of, or what you can offer, or if you should get the next job, the next promotion, if you should be on the next team for that big fun thing that they're thinking about. If people don't know you, if you can't articulate who you are, no matter how good you are at IT, you're going to be stifled. You're going to be in a little bit of a box because people don't know you. You have to learn to share comfortably who you are. Would you pay $114 for an entire year of training? You'd think that's crazy. What coach am I going to get for $114 for the entire year? I'm a coach and I can tell you I'm not going to take you on for $114 for the entire year. I'm not going to do that. But Toastmasters will do that. That's what it costs to join the club. $114 for an entire year of training. That is crazy. And if you stick with Toastmasters, they will build you a lifetime of confidence. Back to you, Nick. I hope I see you all at a Toastmasters meeting.
How do I unmute? Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. Don't forget to stop the share.
Sharing.
Awesome.
There you go.
Yeah, I'll put the link to toastmasters.org in the chat. But yeah, all that is absolutely right. Amazing. I would attribute much of my success in my career to my membership in Toastmasters. Either that extemporaneous speaking and a job interview, being able to speak off the cuff. The other time I would say was in that pivotal moment. It wasn't the interview with the manager, the hiring manager. It was that unofficial interview on day one, when you're in that first team meeting and they go around the room saying what you do, and all that. And everyone expects you to bomb that, right? To stutter and stammer, to not really know what you do and what you're good at. But if you can nail that, you are suddenly like a 1.5 year veteran in the eyes of everybody who just met you, because you were able to speak with confidence and competence, and they're going to start with that assumption there for you and then let you prove otherwise, right? Rather than assume you know nothing and have to work up. But yeah, thank you, Michelle. That was awesome. I'm so glad I asked, and I'm so glad you accepted to speak about Toastmasters. And we're right on time, ready for the business value and creating that with TabPy and Brent Lodge. Brent Lodge. Are you ready to share your screen and do your thing?
Yes,
And
yes,
Brent,
I am. Thanks, Nick.
Awesome. Welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you. Is everyone able to see the data source window that I have here?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, just want to make sure that's working. Hi, everyone. My name is Brent Lodge. I am a BI analyst in Nashville at Louisiana Pacific. Been here about 1.5 years. I have a background in engineering. I am a relatively new dad to a really cool 7-month-old. And before I started sharing, I wanted to make sure there was no little baby toys and stuff behind me. And I think we got that taken care of. So now we can get down to business. Today, I'm going to be talking a bit about my experiences in TabPy and what I've been able to do with it for LP. So I was approached with a challenge to help our business users with an issue they had that involved tracking some of our freight. Our sales guys were being compensated based on how much freight was going out the door and how much was being left at the facility. And so they were looking at a report and they were getting data in from SAP, but one of the big problems was, at the end of the day, or at the end of the week rather, we might have had a manager say, I'm not going to hold this against a guy because I just found about it an hour ago. It'd be really great if I could go in there and change a couple of numbers. We said, well, that's not really how our data works. But we kind of racked the brain a little bit and came up with a concept that I thought could be useful integrating TabPy. We haven't used TabPy before, so it was a little bit of an exploration. And so I want to show you guys a little bit about how I accomplished that. I am not a security expert. So take all this with a grain of salt. This is just how I was able to accomplish something for our team. The first thing you'll notice is that this is not that report at all. I did not want to show anything that could possibly be problematic for my employment. So we're going to be looking at the famous global superstore order data set. It's going to be a little bit pared down, but that's what we're going to be looking at first. So I'm going to warn you and just say for a Tableau user group, this is going to be the least attractive dashboard you've ever seen in your life. Ta-da. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to simulate the idea that we have a business who is interested in looking at certain orders. We know the sales, we know the profit, but their business manager comes in and says, you know what? I know that we originally said it was a 0 discount, but we need to adjust that. We need to be able to adjust that on the fly. So that's the goal in mind here. What we are using is I'm going to have a couple of filters here so we can look at any particular order we want to look at. So I'll start by just filtering one particular row ID. And we'll say row 10, sure. It is important to note that when I'm looking at the row ID, what's useful about that is that it's unique. In this data set, it's a primary key, and that's something we have to look at. So I find row ID and I say, okay, the discount is 0. I need to change that. I need to make the discount 2. So I have a series of parameters here. That's what we're going to be using throughout this. And I'll show you how it is working, and then we can take a step back and kind of look under the hood and talk a little bit about TabPy and how we were able to make this work. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my row ID. Oh, I said 10. And I said the discount is 0, but I want to change that to 2. And I don't want just anybody to be able to do it. So if you want write back functionality, you need to know a passcode. There's a unique passcode that you have to use to be able to do it. And that'll go in this parameter. The correct passcode for us is 60. And then once everything's good, I'm going to have you slide the slider to the right. And by doing that, it will still, by sliding it to the right, all the changes are live. Everything is processing. And we're kind of seeing that right now. It'll take a couple of seconds. We'll slide it to the left. And when it's left, that means we are able to kind of change parameters as we need to without worrying about changing any data. Now I will click F5. I will refresh my data, and I should see a discount of 2. So we just got to get a couple of cleaning here, filtering, and now I have a discount of 2. So I have functional write back capabilities. So how did I do that? Well, we had to use TabPy. And if you're not familiar with TabPy, TabPy is kind of the fusion of using Python within Tableau. So real quick to step through some of the early steps you got to do. If you're not familiar, you really want to go to Anaconda, download yourself. I would recommend the Anaconda environment, kind of the gold standard. Getting Python, I found that it worked best with a 3.7 environment. Your results may vary, but I would recommend a 3.7 environment. You will then need to pip install a couple of different libraries, and we'll walk through those in a little bit. But one of the best resources is actually the repo and GitHub for TabPy specifically. We found everything we needed in there. Once you have everything kind of downloaded and installed properly, if you open up the command prompt, you should be able to run a localized version. By just initiating TabPy. What that'll do is it'll send a local server on your port 9004. And this is kind of where a lot of the resources online will point you, right? Is to get a local server going. And here I can confirm that, hey, I've got my TabPy server going. This is where it is. And here are some of the here are a few models that I've deployed to it, which is all great. And it's a great jumping off point. However, our issue was that we have to deploy it across our business, and we're using Tableau Online. And therefore, I can't be asking business users, hey, you can only do this if I can spin up a local host server. So we had to deploy that with our IT department. We got a separate standalone server, which was another, set of challenges. And to that, I would once again highly, highly, highly recommend going into this repo for TabPy within the docs. It has all the information that the people who are much smarter than myself and can set up such things will use for all sorts of different configurations. So that's kind of the start and how we had to get that going. Now, we ended up using a connection with Google Sheets. The reason why is Tableau has so many excellent connectors to different databases. I wasn't able to try all of them, But what I did know is I could connect Tableau to a live connection of Google Sheets, and I could have Python connect very easily to Google Sheets, which is critical. For our use, but not for this example, for our use, we were having data come in from SAP. So we have a separate file, separate Python file that pulls data from SAP. It's going to do all the ETL, and it writes it to a Google Sheet. Okay. And then Tableau will simply connect to that Google Sheet. So Tableau will never connect to SAP or whatever the master source of data is. That way we can keep that completely unadulterated, and we know that that is the source of truth. So for this example, we're connecting to Google Sheets. You will need to set up a Google Cloud instance. I am definitely not sharing that because I know it's going to expose a password, my license plate number, my blood type, and maybe a copy of my house key. I don't know. But that's something that you will need to do. It's fairly easy to do, and it can be done for free. So with that in mind, that is what our data source is here. We are only connecting to Google Sheets. Okay. So it's important. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned this, but another important reason for Google Sheets is that it needs to be a live connection. If it's not a live connection, you're not really going to be able to refresh that table and see the change that you made. And the user might say, hey, what's going on with this thing? I thought you said it worked. Well, it does work. You wrote to it. You're just, since it's on an extract, you're not able to see it. Why don't you wait for another hour? That's not a good answer. So we need to have a live connection, and that's one of the reasons we picked Google Sheets. In the future, likely what we'll end up doing is we'll probably try to navigate this to Snowflake. But this was one of those things that I knew that I could do quickly and within a certain deadline. So what you'll need to do when you've got everything set up, if you go into Help, Settings and Performance, and the Analytics extension, this is where you will find all of the, well, if I can find it. There it is. Okay. This is where you need to put in all the information for your server. Okay. Once this is connected, you should be able to test it and confirm that you are in fact connected. We know we are because we saw it work, right? You guys are witness to that. So when we want to start writing code, you're going to make a calculated field. Okay. I have one here called writeback function, and I'll show you exactly some of the code inside of it and what we thought could be useful. If you are not familiar with Python, that's cool. You won't know that this is not the cleanest, most beautiful code in the world. It's just something I can put together. So I appreciate that. I would also note that, is this the best way to put your TabPy function in? No, not really. You probably don't want code directly inside the report itself. That makes it a little difficult to, if someone else needs to pick it up and work on it. There's also the possibility of security concerns. Once again, I am not a So what we're doing here is I am importing all the libraries that I'm going to need. I have my URL for my Google Sheet, and I am creating a data frame here and saying that, hey, take everything you found on that Google Sheet, create a data frame. That's what we're going to be working off of. These are simply connectors to that Google Sheet. And now we have a number of different variables. Okay, and the variables are going to be set equal to our parameters in most cases. I say in most cases because I do have a variable here for username that is not a parameter. That is the username function within Tableau, right? And there's a reason for that. The meat of this code lies within this if statement, which says basically if the enter slider plus the passcode equal whatever number your team comes up with, let's do the thing. Else, don't do the thing. So again, do you have a possible security concern if someone can get in here? Yeah, probably. But if you know Hank likes to dig in and start hacking around with all your stuff, maybe control, his role permissions, and don't let him mess with something like this. I would argue 99% of your users are not going to get to this level, but it's just another consideration. And then we're going to say, look for our primary key, which in this instance was our row ID, and we're going to change it to the value we specified in the parameter. We're going to append that data frame. We're going to update the Google Sheet with that new information. So that's everything I showed you. One thing I did not show you that I think is particularly interesting and I think has possibilities going forward is that I've created a line here that says, hey, anybody who is interacting with this parameter, if someone is changing something in these reports, it'd be nice to know about it. So these lines here are simply to say, hey, I want you to find, oh, I commented out an old one. Oh. I want you to find this particular location. I want you to take the username of the person who was adjusting these parameters. I want you to take the time they did it, and I want you to send that to a separate CSV in an archive somewhere. So that these are all the parameters we have, and you'll be able to see, we have 4 parameters in purple. We have the username in orange. So one thing that you can see now is when I ran that update earlier, I now have some additions. I can tell that while we were talking on 2/23/2022 at, what is that, 15:50 and 2 seconds, Brent Lodge made some sort of adjustment. And just based on how this code is written, if you open this particular file up, you should be able to see, if I pull it onto the proper screen, the row at the very bottom shows the update. So I know that row ID 10 was adjusted to a value of a discount of 2. So even if someone does go in and they start changing things, if they somehow find they have the passcode to do that, we're still going to be able to keep track and keep a record of who's doing that. It can also be, not just big brother over your shoulder, but it gives us an idea of who is interacting with reports. So one place we might be able to go in the future is say, okay, who is interacting with this dashboard? Which parameters are they interacting with? What are they changing them to? Therefore, what do they care about? And what are we able to follow up with them on? So we can collect all that information with exactly how they're doing it. One thing that can also be useful is inside that code, we have the ability to say, hey, we made an archive. Let's also send an email. Let me let one of my sales guys know, hey, this person's doing XYZ in the dashboard. They seem to be really interested in XYZ. So email goes out to the sales guy just to say, hey, touch base with this person. Let them know a little birdie told me that you're interested in what have you. It gives us a lot of flexibility. It opens up a lot of doors for us. And so we have a lot further to go. This was our case for it, but there are a number of different cases that can be made with future applications. So one of the really big starting points that I found that I would recommend if you're looking into this is this post here, how to build advanced analytics applications with TabPy. It's got a sample workbook and it shows much more proper ways of how to do things. So for example, instead of having everything in line, like I just showed you, you can deploy your model and simply have return the TabPy query for that particular function, call the parameter arguments there. And then that way, Hank, who likes to hack around all the different things, can't go in here and see, hey, the passcode was 60 the whole time, right? So that's the more proper way to do it. And especially if you're going to be deploying multiple, multiple different models, that's how you're going to want to manage them all. TabPy, in my understanding, was created to work a little more with the analytics. So think machine learning models, which would just not be, this would not be a good place to store heavy machine learning models, right? So that's a little bit more of the traditional sense in where TabPy, I believe, came from. I showed you kind of some little backdoor sort of hack things that we're putting together that have interesting use for us and deliver value to our business users. I keep doing that. Again, if you want a good example on the analytics, the ML side of things, I would highly recommend this post. I can put it in the chat. But that is also a place we're going to be going in the future. So does anyone have any questions, anything that I can help you guys with? And obviously, if you have ideas about how this could help your business, I would love to hear it. I would love to steal your ideas, claim them as my own, and make myself look smarter to my boss. So if you have any of that, I'm all ears.
Hey, Brent, I've got a couple of questions. One, where did
Sure.
you get your personality? Because I would like one as well. Kind of a rhetorical question. So we'll move on to the second one. And I put it in the chat, but am I getting right that TabPy can capture clicks? Like, is there maybe use, I don't know if you'd use parameter actions or if that's even necessary, but if I clicked on a row ID, could it then capture, if I selected that as an interface, that row ID, could it then populate the row ID for me?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, Nick, I am not sure about that. I know that what we have to do inside of the code itself is to set the set a variable that Python can work within, and the parameter. So for example, this passcode here, well, that's not a good example because of what you were talking about. We got to click something. So I'll say this. Yeah, exactly. Like your row ID, I need to be able to set that to a particular argument that it calls out here. If you're able to click on a particular row, I think it would need to establish that as a parameter, and I am not sure if I've been able to do that. I've had to be a little more explicit with defining arguments so that we can set them in a variable.
Right, but you are using parameters, right? Like the bottom of your calculated field, that's purple text. It's a little fuzzy on my screen, but that is purple text, right?
That's correct.
You should look into parameter actions and see what you can do with that. I think you might have a lot of opportunity there. The other thing I want to note,
Nick,
it's not
that might well work, but you should be aware that all the interface going to Python is done in table calculations.
That's true.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Then maybe not.
It's down there, and that's not to say it won't work, but just be aware that it's all done in table calculations, and there's
Right.
There's 4 options and they're all in table calculations. I'm sorry.
Great
And
point.
that's a great point. There are 4 options you can select for your script. I believe it's integer, Boolean, real, and string. And because they are for table calculations, the idea is that they will output something in that data type. But because that's not really what we're using it for in this application, we haven't been kind of fighting that that particular challenge. But yeah, Jim, that's an excellent point.
And I think the other thing I want to call, this isn't really a question, but more of a thing for everyone else. As I understand it, you at LP are using Tableau Online, right? I think that's
Correct.
something that people could or should be aware of, that this would work not just for Tableau server and people who might have more IT under their belt, but this is something that would work even if you're using Tableau Online as a cloud solution provided by Tableau.
Absolutely. And it to the user, it works exactly the same way. When they first use it, they have to, in this particular instance, they have to basically say that they have a Google account so that they'll verify that they can use Google Sheets.
Sure.
And they do that once and they never have to do that again. Otherwise, they don't notice that. When the developer sets it up, there's a very similar option to the one that I just showed. Just connecting which particular analytics connection you're going to be using. You set that once and you move on. So it's pretty easy to navigate once you've kind of done it.
Okay, and just for people who are not on a server, you can also load it on desktop and you can run it locally on desktop. So,
Correct.
Does that work through Tableau Reader too?
no,
Like if you were to take your desktop solution, package it, and send it to somebody in Reader, it wouldn't work.
no, I don't believe so. I don't believe
Makes
so.
sense. I wouldn't expect it to. I was prepared to be amazed. Any other questions? You don't have to come off mute if you don't want to. You're not in Toastmasters yet, so we won't hold you to that. But you can put your questions in the chat. Or if you are even more bashful and you just want to private chat me, I'll maintain your anonymity. I'll leave a brief pause to give people time to type that up. And if there are none, we'll just move on a little ahead of schedule. Yeah, Brent, great job. Again, appreciate your personality, your candor, and your communication.
Thank y'all. And if there's anything anyone wants to reach out to me directly about, I will do my best to answer and be as much of a resource as I can.
Yeah, we'll hold you to putting that link in the chat as well. Maybe include your email or whatever email you'd like for us to have to reach out directly. That would be appreciated.
Absolutely. No problem.
Well done, sir. All right, Eric. The floor is yours, sir.
All right.
You got a very own game show host here.
Share that so everybody can see the quiz. We'll get started. I put the link in the chat. It's kahoot.it. It's www.kahoot.it, or take a picture of the QR code. Once you're in, enter the number and that will get you started in the quiz. As I said last month, this quiz today is over all of the biz of the days from the past month. And so I hope everyone subscribed and paid attention. I had a lot of fun with it. Learned a bit and was surprised by a couple of things that I noticed across the board with the chat. So I think, Jim, we have a $50 gift certificate. So when we are done, please direct chat Jim Diener with your email address so that he can get you the gift certificate for the Tableau online store. And hopefully next month, maybe we'll have prizes for all 3 winners. We'll see how that goes. Kelly talked about that today.
I see that Pam wants cash. No, Pam, no cash. It's a gift certificate and it's good at the Tableau store, but keep trying.
Hey, the first gift certificate I had was for $35, and there wasn't much you could get on the online store for $35. But I think for $50, you can probably get something pretty decent. All right, ready to go? Let's play. All right, so the February Visit of the Day quiz. Do you receive Visit of the Days on weekends? Yes or no? On weekends, you can spend your time playing games or doing other things. This was a viz on Nintendo. So the answer is no. You only get Visit of the Days Monday through Friday. And I was surprised that I missed a few. There were a couple of days, I'm guessing they had holidays or something. But how many rows did Brian Moore let you customize on his Mandela design? 4, 12, 6, or 10? Brian does some really cool stuff with just mathematics and graphics. He did one with the solar orbits that looked really cool, like spirographs. So the correct answer was 3. No, was 6. 3 people got it right. So Patrick is in the lead. Which is the top producing honey state in the US? This was the only Visit of the Day that was not submitted by an individual, but by a group. So the Economic Research Service submitted this one. And the correct answer is North Dakota. And Lindsay is in the lead. And here you go. You can see North Dakota has a lot more honey than most everybody else. Not sure why that is, but pretty interesting. So how many Visit of the Days were published by women in the past month? So one thing I learned from the Visit of the Days, you can click on the name and go to that person's public page and see their picture. So my male and female was gathered just by looking at their pictures. And the correct answer was 5. There were 5 women in this month's Visit of the Days. And next, how many Visit of the Days do January's featured authors have? So every day, I guess they have a featured author, and this was a Visit of the Day that they selected that showed information about featured authors. So 2.7, 18, 16, 17, or 21. And 21 is the correct answer. It was right there on the screen. So which species was not explored in this threatened species viz? There were vises on, well, mammals, plants, birds, or reptiles are the species that your choice. And the correct answer was reptiles. Lindsay's still in the lead, but this threatened species had birds, mammals, and plants. Not sure why they didn't look at reptiles and insects, but anyway, so which category had the least Viz of the Days in the past month? History, design, science, or entertainment? I really like this meteor showers. There were 3 correct answers. The only one that was in the lead was design. So there were a lot. Almost asked how many had the Hughes Superstore. There were 3 Superstore Visit of the Days. So Cameron is the winner. Congratulations. And I will stop with that. And
Cameron, if you will, this is Jim, if you will put your email address directly to me in the chat, I'll see that you get your gift certificate.
all right. So I hope everybody enjoyed the visit of the days. I thoroughly enjoyed going out and checking them out every month. And next month, the quiz is going to be on features in Tableau 2021.4 and the upcoming 2022.1. So look at what's new for each of those, and we'll have a features quiz.
Nice. All right, we are trucking right along. I'm off mute. That's good. Well done, Eric. I had a lot of fun losing. Thank you for that opportunity. Appreciate it very much. So yeah, we're moving right along. This is all in Central Time for those of you watching after hours or in YouTube or Eastern Time, whatever it is. Next up, we have Tableau and Starburst, led by Ben Lumbert and perhaps also Ray Hines. I wasn't sure, and I'm still not sure if he was able to join us, but I know Ray is at least here.
I am
Ray,
here.
are you ready?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, hi, Ray. Excellent. So we got a tag team duo here. I'll stop sharing. Open the floor and the mic for these two gentlemen. You all ready?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
We can see your screen.
You can see my screen. All right. Let me just open up the chat here in case anything comes in. All righty. Well, thank you everyone for having us today. We're definitely excited to be speaking to the group today. Just a little bit of background on me. I'm Ben Lumbert, a partner solution architect over at Starburst Data. Unfortunately, we're not Starburst Candy, so we don't have any giveaways on that front, but maybe next time we can help you out there. And then I have Ray Hines here, who works with me on the Technology Alliances team over at Starburst. And our main focus is on our key ISV integrations with partners like Tableau. We also work with Red Hat and HPE and a few others as well. Ray, I don't know if you wanted to say a few things before I jump on in.
No, just really just want to thank everybody for allowing us to participate today. Looking forward to kind of educating you all on the power of a Starburst with Tableau. So yeah, I'll turn it over to Ben.
Awesome. Thank you. So, I'll try to keep this as painless as possible. We do have some slides up front here just to kind of cover a little bit of the history of Starburst. We won't go into too much depth, but just to give you a little bit of context of who we are and what we do. And then we'll spend the majority of those slides actually looking at some of the value adds that we can bring to Tableau. And then I'll kind of wrap things up with a brief demo of using Starburst with Tableau. We're not going to get too much into the nuts and bolts just because there is a lot that we could show. And, a lot of the benefits that we provide are really around performance, which, during a shorter window of time could take a little while to render. But the whole point of all of that is when you start to use the Starburst connector in Tableau, your experience will be very much the same as it would be with most other connectors, in that it's very simple to connect to. You don't really have to do much else in Tableau, differently from what you're doing today. But there are some key advantages that we'll cover in just a little bit, mainly things like using live connections instead of extracts, leaving auto updates on so that you can actually stay in the flow within your viz and not have to worry about pausing things and rearranging things. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. Just to kind of level set here, or give you a little bit of background on who we are. So you may have heard of the terms out there, Presto SQL before, or now Trino. This is the open source technology that Starburst Enterprise is built on top of. It was originally started back at Facebook in around 2012 to address some of the performance challenges with Hive. They basically liked the ability of Hive to query file systems and object storage data, but the performance wasn't quite there. So our founders and creators developed this open source project, which was formerly called Presto SQL, now called Trino, to address those performance needs. And really at our core, what we are is an ANSI SQL compliant MPP query engine. What this really means is that we can take in ANSI SQL, which most people are familiar with, and common BI tools like Tableau will help generate and send off to us to process. And then we're distributed in nature. So you can actually, you have Starburst running in a cluster somewhere, whether it's on premise or in the cloud, in Kubernetes or on bare metal. And then we have a series of nodes that we actually use to do the actually heavy lifting and processing of the query. The beauty of that is that it's linearly scalable. So if you need more horsepower, you can get that on demand at the moment that you need it, and then we'll scale that back down for you as needed. So you're not, running servers that you don't necessarily need to run at a particular point in time. The key thing here is that we do separate compute from storage, so you can scale those both independently. Now, there's great systems out there, super performance systems like Snowflake, where you kind of have to scale both up at the same time. So maybe you're scaling up compute, but you don't really need the additional storage, but you're paying for both. And by us allowing to separate those two, you can actually be more efficient with your infrastructure costs. So you're really just scaling up the compute as you need, and then you can leave the data stored where it's at today. You don't have to move it around or copy it into a single location or consolidate it. You can actually run SQL against all of your data through a single point of access. And we found that this also helps give our customers the flexibility to use the data sources that they want to use, so they don't have to feel forced into pushing all of their data into one source. They can actually have some of their data up in the cloud. They can have some on-premise. They can have some in a data lake or coming in through streaming systems. They can also deploy in whichever cloud they want. And if they just choose to change their mind, which often happens in organizations, they can do so with more ease than before, because with Starburst, as we'll see in a little bit, we give you that central single point of connection to all of your data. So as the data is shifting around or moving to different locations behind the scenes, you don't have to update your connection in Tableau. You can use the same connection today as you would tomorrow. And then once the data is moved, continue to query it. I'm not going to go into detail on here. Usually if this was like a sales pitch, I would, but I at least just wanted to kind of illustrate here where we add value above and beyond that open source core. So similar to this stories you've probably heard before around like Sparks and Databricks or Kafka and Confluent, we provide these enterprise features above and beyond the open source core to really give our customers what they need. And the main areas that we focus on are performance. So we're trying to develop more performant connectors or increase the performance of the open source connectors. We provide some proprietary connectors that are unique to us. And then we also enhance some of those connectors that are available in the open source core. We provide a wealth of security options. So, integrating with your favorite authentication systems. And then we also have native security integrations with things like Immuta and Ranger and Privacera to ensure that you can secure your data across all of your data sources through a single point of access. We also try to make Trino easier to manage and configure. So it is a distributed application typically running in Kubernetes, which means a lot of config files across a lot of different servers and keeping those all in sync. But here at Starburst, we try to bring things to bear that will make it easier for you to deploy your clusters, keep them running, and keep them up to date as new releases and things like that are rolled out. And then finally, on the support front, you can go to the open source community, of course, and try to get your help there. But if you're an enterprise customer and you've got data that needs to be out tomorrow, you want someone that you can actually call and email. And so, of course, we're going to provide that degree of support to our customers out in the field. So where we sit in the ecosystem is essentially between the data consumers, which we have here on the top, and then the data sources that they're trying to connect to. And this is where that single point of access comes into play. We are sometimes referred to as the data consumption layer, or maybe the data query or the query engine for your data mesh, the data fabric, whatever you want to call it. But the kind of gist of it remains the same. And that is that we simplify the connection for those data consumers. Whether you're connecting via, code blocks in Python or Jupyter Notebooks or your favorite BI tool like Tableau, instead of having to establish separate connections to each data source to pull all your data together, you establish one connection to Starburst, and then we'll take care of reaching out to each of the underlying data sources, whether it's your data lakes on-premise or in the cloud, your data warehouses on-premise in the cloud, streaming systems, NoSQL systems, wherever your data is at, we'll reach out to each source for you. We'll push down any optimizations we can, pull back the data we need to process the query, and then we process all of that data in memory and then return it back to the calling system. So in this case, Tableau. And we wrap this with our global security features like being able to do role-based access controls if you're using Ranger or Privacera, being able to do attribute-based access controls through like Immuta, as well as things like data masking and whatnot to ensure that people are only able to access the data that they should be accessing. Just because we're simplifying access to data doesn't mean we want to expose you to any unnecessary risk. So we're allowing you to also manage all of your access policies through a single point as well, versus having to do it individually for each data source. And so right quick here, I'll just take you through. We're not going to go into the full details of the Starburst architecture, but I at least wanted to get a little bit of an understanding of how queries are processed by Starburst when they come in for Tableau or from Tableau. So, here we have our user who's writing their favorite viz in Tableau, and that issues some query behind the scenes. Now that query is going to come into what we call the coordinator node within the Starburst cluster. This is essentially the brains of the operation, if you will. This is that single point of access that you're connecting to. So when you put in your connection string in Tableau, it's going to be the address of this coordinator, and then the appropriate port, and then SSL if you're happening to use that as well. The coordinator is going to parse the query. It's going to analyze it, make sure it's syntactically correct. And then it's going to check to any of your security systems to make sure that the data that the user is trying to access they're actually allowed to access. So if they're not allowed to see certain tables or columns of views, those will be hidden. The query will be ejected. If, however, they are allowed to see that, then the query will be broken up into smaller, more efficient parts and distributed across the worker nodes that are available in your cluster. So where the coordinator node is the brains of the operation, the worker nodes are really the muscle. Each worker node is going to securely reach out to the data source that is involved in its portion of the query. So the query is broken up into fragments. Each worker is tasked with processing one or more of those fragments. A fragment may hit one or more data sources. The workers will reach out securely to those underlying data sources. They will push down any optimizations they can. The benefit there is that it's less data to pull back in memory, less egress charges, less to pull across the wire. And it ensures that we're relying on the underlying data sources to do the processing that they can. So, we're not going to make Snowflake faster than Snowflake is, but if Snowflake can help us reduce the amount of data that we need to process, then it speeds up the whole process. Once each worker has the data it needs, it's going to pull that back into memory. And then the workers are going to collaborate, so to speak, and share any data that they need to and join data in memory to eventually return that back to the coordinator node. And then if there's any masking or anything that needs to be applied, the coordinator node will do that before it eventually streams that data back to the Tableau user. And because of our parallelism, I always get that word a little tripped up, because of our ability to process the query in parallel and scale out on demand if need be, so we can actually add additional workers automatically for you if demand gets above a certain level, and then scale those workers down once that demand subsides. This allows us to actually get really great performance across a variety of data sources, especially data lakes. So just a few quick updates here. So we have our own built connector here for Tableau and Tableau Server and Tableau Prep. As of 2021.2, it's automatically included. So if you were to download 2021.2, you would see the Starburst Enterprise by Starburst connector already available in the list of connectors. If you're running a version prior to that, all the way up to 20.4, you can actually download that connector from the Tableau extension gallery. Super easy to install. You just download the connector file, the .taco file, install it in the appropriate directory on your laptop. You can grab the Presto or the Trino driver from us, the JDBC driver, drop that in the right location, restart Tableau, and then you'll see Starburst show up in your list of connectors. And as you can see here, the connection process is just like it would be to most any other data source. You simply provide the host that you're trying to connect to. So in this case, that's that coordinator node that we talked about. We do support SSL. So if you have a secure cluster, you can change the port number here. We also provide a series of different authentication mechanisms. So it can be as simple as username and password. We also integrate with LDAP, and we provide Kerberos support. And then we're working on rolling out other authentication methods like OAuth. One thing I do want to call out here, though, so Tableau does currently have a Presto connector, but that only works up to version 350 of Presto SQL. That's when we did the name change from Presto SQL to Trino. So if you're connecting to newer versions of Trino or Starburst, you'll essentially would need to use our connector. There is a open source, so I need to update this slide, but there is now an open source Trino connector. But again, that is maintained by an open source community. So you're probably not going to get all of the security features, the login mechanisms that you would need. And it may not get updated at a regular cadence, whereas this is a top tier connector for us. And so we're constantly working on improving it. So now into the fun bits, the areas where we're really trying to help Tableau users get more out of Tableau. Now, this is you're one of the first groups to see all these slides, so we definitely welcome any feedback and thoughts that you would like to share on how we can improve this. But This is kind of what we've come up with so far, and we've sourced some of this information from actually some people who are working at Starburst now who used to work at Tableau themselves. And the main areas that we like to focus on are security. First of all, there are obviously some extra steps required in Tableau to get the column level and row level security set up, and data hashing and masking may not be directly supported. You may have to do that at the underlying data source level. But the beauty of Starburst is that we allow you to do all of this through Starburst itself, whether again, it's through that Ranger integration or it's a Muta or Privacera. You can actually define all of your column level security, row level security, RBAC, ABAC, whatever you need through those solutions. And then you can also apply any masking or hashing. And what makes this easier is, like, let's take an Muta, for example. You would, if you had multiple data sources that you're trying to connect to, you would have to define multiple data sources in a Muta. Unfortunately, a Muta would allow you to apply those policies across all of them, but you still would have to define each individual data source. With Starburst, this is true for all of our integrations, security integrations. We're that one single data connection that you have to configure. So you don't have to rinse and repeat and keep on doing that and worry about keeping things in sync. You define the one data source, and then we take care of pushing all of those security policies down into the underlying data sources. So it's one place to manage. You don't have to do anything extra in Tableau to actually enforce those policies. Since Tableau is just passing the queries directly through to Starburst, we do the processing in the security application. We pass the results back to Tableau already with those policies applied. On the connector development front, this is a challenge for most organizations across the board, including us. But since we are a query engine, we put a lot of effort into developing new connectors. And so, we've spoke to some of our counterparts at Tableau, and they've mentioned that it's been a challenge keeping up with a lot of the incoming requests for new connectors. And so again, where Starburst can provide some lift is that as we roll out new connectors, those automatically become available to Tableau users. So Tableau doesn't necessarily have to work on creating a new connector just for that. They still just connect through Starburst. And then since Starburst has that connector built in, the users can continue or can start connecting to that new data source without any additional setup on their side. Now, one of my favorite ones is the improved performance aspect here. We'll touch on this at a high level, but if you're interested, there's actually a blog that our director of product strategy, Russell Christopher, who used to work at Tableau before coming here, that he put together. I'm going to post that in the chat right now. It's light reading, so to speak. He doesn't get into a super complicated visualization or anything like that, but the key of his write-up is essentially he's processing a lot of data. I think it's a TPCH data set, maybe it's TPCDS, and I think he's using a standard query from those benchmarks, but showing the difference of running that using joins in Tableau versus using joins through Starburst. The TPCH data technically usually comes from one source, but he actually distributed across both, I believe, an S3 data S3 bucket, as well as left it in like a Postgres database, and then joined that data first through Tableau and then through Starburst itself, and kind of shows you the performance differences there. But what that really boils down to is these two key areas where we try to provide some additional lift around performance for Tableau users. On the query federation front, of course, you can do some joins and relationship mapping in Tableau, and then you can that will generate the appropriate queries and send it to the underlying systems. Some of the challenges with that, though, are that essentially you'd have to establish multiple connections through Tableau. You'd have to do the joining through Tableau, which is not that big of a deal, but you are limited to wherever Tableau is running as far as processing power. So if you're running Tableau desktop, which I'll show during the demo, you're limited to kind of the power of your particular machine. Server, if you're using Tableau server, of course, that changes somewhat, but again, it depends on how big your Tableau server deployment is. Versus Starburst, if you're using Starburst and Tableau together, Tableau actually sends the query directly to us, and we do all the heavy lifting. So that will allow you to get fast performance against all of your data sources, including data lakes, and allow you to stay in that flow when you're building your visualizations instead of trying to rely on extracts or waiting for refreshes, and then also having to pause auto updates, particularly as you start to adjust your visualizations. Similarly, on the kind of performance front, we also can empower users to, as I kind of touched on, use live connections instead of extracts. So again, because we're doing all the processing for you, and because it's a distributed query engine that's usually running with several nodes and tons of vCPUs, you don't have to worry about relying on extracts because it may take too long to refresh as you're building out your visualization. So, and then obviously there's issues with extracts in general. This is just the nature of the beast. This is, nothing against Tableau or anything like that, but it's really just extracts, right? They're a snapshot in time, so they might be stale or outdated. If you're in an organization or a role where you have to work with fresh data all the time, then we can provide some lift there because you can leave live connections on and still get the performance that you would expect with extracts. And then another thing I forgot to touch on here, sorry, going back to the query federation. This is mainly around our connectors, so not the Tableau connector to Starburst, but the Starburst connectors to the underlying data sources. We are constantly working on improving these connectors, and one of the areas that we mainly focus on is optimization push down. So for each data source, we're going to try to push down whatever optimizations we can, like filters, predicate push down, dynamic partition pruning, aggregations, which will help ultimately speed up overall processing time as well. So this is another area where if you rely on Starburst to do the query federation and rely on Tableau to do the visualization, that we can help help you get some performance gains as you're working through your daily workflows. And then the kind of last high level one here I'll cover before we go into some basic considerations and then into the demo is around data lake access. Now, I'm still relatively new to using Tableau, so if you've got feedback here or if anything misstated, please do let us know. But from my understanding is that basically there's, other than the data lake storage connector that they have, there's really no direct connectors for object storage unless you're going to go through something like Hadoop, which of course is a bit of a pain to set up, and people are still using it out there, but it's got its challenges inherent to it. With Starburst, you don't have to worry about going through Hadoop or anything like that. We actually have native connectors, direct connectors to a variety of different data lakes or object storage out there. And you can see the different options that we have here. So we've got S3 and S3 compatible systems like Ceph storage in the OpenShift world, HDFS if you need to, the Azure data lake storage, Google Cloud storage. We've got a new Delta Lake connector as well as a new Iceberg connector, and then MinIO, which is basically on-prem object storage as well. And we do offer optimization pushdowns for a lot of these connectors. So not only are you going to get direct access to the data lake, but you're going to get faster access to the data lake. And then the last two considerations I'll cover here before I move over to the demo is basically around an abstraction layer. So what we're kind of seeing in the field as we start to roll this out more to people and have them start to use the Tableau connector is that Tableau can actually, or the Starburst connector can actually make this easier for you to share these abstractions or share these semantic views, if you will, across the organization. So let's say that there's other people elsewhere in the org using other BI tools, and they've got some logic baked in, like joining tables together or something, but that's trapped in that data system, right? And so how do you leverage it in Tableau? Well, fortunately, since Starburst is a query engine, you can actually create views through Starburst. They'll be defined in Starburst. The actual data behind the scenes will be stored in Hive or wherever you want, but the semantic layer, the view definition itself is stored in Starburst. The beauty of that is that you can now access that logic through any BI tool that you want, including Tableau. So it's not just trapped in wherever it was originally created, whatever BI solution or client tool. It's actually available to anyone who has access to the Starburst cluster. In building on that, we can actually help simplify some of the management of your data connections as well, again, because you just have the one data source to connect to and maintain. That can be shared up to a Tableau server and other people can access it. You don't have to worry about maintaining separate connections to each individual data source that you need for your job. So hopefully, this will make it easier for you all to manage the connections that you need to use and share with others so that you can focus your time and effort on the actual fun stuff of building visualizations. All right, enough of me blabbing on. Unless there's any quick questions, I'm going to go ahead and hop over to the demo.
Quick question regarding, you mentioned masking about the coordinator node.
Yep.
Just to make sure I understand what you mean by masking, that's like where you change the data just to protect the innocent, to make sure that PHI, PII, private information is masked.
Exactly. And, those can range in degree. Like, let's take the Ranger again as an open source security tool. So they have some basic masking available, like all but the last four, all but the first four, mask it all or hash it all if you want. Then when you get into enterprise offerings like Privacera or Immuta, they have much more advanced masking options, k-anonymization, and all these other different fun
Right.
things that can tie into
Sure.
your governance policies and all of that.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I know we're here to see Tableau more than Starburst, so I'm not going to spend too much time on here. This is our web user interface that we have for Starburst. If you're using Tableau to connect to Starburst, odds are you won't be spending any time in here. You'll just be connecting Tableau directly to Starburst. So I'm not going to go into all the different aspects of the interface here, but just wanted to highlight two quick things here for you. The first thing you'll see here is all of these databases here. What we refer to as catalogs. These are all the data sources that this particular demo cluster that's running in AWS is connected to. The reason I want to show this here is because once we get into Tableau, you will probably see the schema by schema versus all of the data sources in one location. So I just kind of wanted to provide a visualization here of how you can see just all the different data sources that you can connect to. This is by no means a comprehensive list. This is just what I have wired up in this particular demo environment. But you'll see a variety of options like here, this Hive connector, and you can name this whatever you want, but this one happens to be pointed to S3. We've got the Iceberg connector, which is also pointed to that same S3. We've got MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, Snowflake. We've actually got some here as well that you see prefixed with AZ. What this means is that this current cluster is running in AWS. We have another Starburst cluster running in Azure. We have a special connector called Stargate Connector, which actually allows you to connect two clusters together. Now you may be asking, why would I have to connect two clusters together if Starburst can connect to anything? Well, this really comes down to like data sovereignty. So let's say that you're working in the US, you've got a cluster running here, you've got some data stored over in EMEA or over in Europe, and because of certain regulatory compliances, any data that's coming from Europe actually has to be processed over there. Well, the beauty of the Stargate connector is that you can actually send a query to be processed by that remote cluster. The results get returned locally, but because the insights are because the query is being processed over in EMEA, you can still hold into any compliance regulations that are around that. So we've got a lot of different options for connecting across the board, to make sure that you can connect to all the data you need. I'm just going to highlight right quick here in our query editor. Again, if you're in Tableau, you're not going to be using this query editor, but I just at least wanted to highlight the kind of access pattern that we see most customers go through before they start using Starburst. So in a simple scenario here, let's say that I've got a variety of data sources that I need to join together. Maybe I'm doing like a customer 360 and I've got some of my customer information stored in the cloud in AWS, in a Postgres instance running in AWS. So I would run my query here against that directly. And then maybe I've got some profile information that I got to join that to that's in an on-premise MySQL database. And then maybe I've got some account and profile information that's stored in S3. Now, before Starburst, we would, you'd probably have to work on moving this data into one of those three data sources. Depending on your budget and your timing, you might try to shove it all into Postgres or Snowflake. Or if you're trying to keep costs down, you might try to move it into S3, but then you could suffer performance there because, it may not be able to get the distributed nature of processing it depending on how you're accessing your data in S3. Now with Starburst, what you can do is you can join all this data in a single query. So for those of you who are familiar with SQL, the only change here is that in front of my schema and table name, I'm actually just providing the data source that it's coming from. And then I can run this query as is, and Starburst is going out, reaching out to Postgres, reaching out to MySQL, reaching out to S3, pushing down the optimizations like the filter on country here, pulling back the data and then returning it to me in real time. Why this is important for Tableau users. So I can actually create a view on top of this. This is what we refer to as semantic views. It's really just a view definition on this, and then expose this view to Tableau users. So if they're not SQL savvy, they don't have to worry about writing these joins or understanding the joins. All they have to do is query this single view like they would any other table available to them, and then they would get the results back. And I just did a simple select count star on here so you can see roughly how many records we're working with. So if I hop over to Tableau, imagine again that if I didn't have Starburst here, I would actually have to establish multiple different data connections here. I'd have to add each data connection here, then do my joins live, which again is not a big deal. It takes a few minutes if you know your data, but maybe you're not as familiar with the relationships between your data. You just know what you need to do with it. Well, with Starburst, we again can simplify that for you. It's one data source connection here. And in here, you can see all the different data sources that Starburst is actually connecting me to, again, which we refer to as catalogs. And then once you get into an individual catalog, you can then see all the schemas that are available there. Now I could take that SQL that I ran over in the other page. Oops, wrong one. And issue that directly in Tableau if I need to, because we support custom SQL for this. So I could use this as my data option. It would join the data for me. And now again, all the processing is being done by Starburst, so I don't have to worry about doing the joins in here or anything like that. But for the sake of this demo, I'm actually going to just use that semantic view that I created back in the Starburst side. So we've got this one view in here that's actually joining from Postgres, MySQL, and S3. I hit update now, and I've got my data coming back from the cluster itself. So the query got completely sent to Starburst. Starburst reached out to each individual data source for me and pulled that data back. You'll also notice that this information here is masked. So that's because I had a ranger policy defined to mask a credit card number. Now this isn't real data, so don't worry. This is all data that we generated on our side. It's not real customer data, but at least just wanted to highlight to you that we can actually do masking and all that through Starburst itself, so you don't have to take any additional steps to do those types of security policies through Tableau. And so, these are pretty basic visualization, but I at least just wanted to show you a couple of things. So for example, here, I'm running these reports against those 440 or 44,000 records that we just looked at. So you'll notice that, let me bounce back here right quick. I did use a live connection here when I was pulling in this data, and I leave that on the whole time through. And I'm also going to leave auto updates off. So if I wanted to add in a filter, for example, let's do customer type here, basic. And the report's already updated. I didn't have to wait for it to update. This will continue to hold true even as you're dealing with larger and larger volumes of data. The whole goal here is to make sure that while you're in the flow, it doesn't get broken up. You don't have to wait for things to refresh and all of that. You can continue to experiment, drag things around, change your filters, add aggregations, whatever you need to, and you'll get the results back in a relatively quick time so that you can continue moving forward. Similarly, if I wanted to go in here and switch like an aggregation, that's going to recompute pretty quickly for me. Again, this is only 44,000 records, but this is also a small cluster, and I'm running Tableau Desktop here on my laptop, which is honestly undersized. But imagine running this against much larger volumes of data, and you probably have a much bigger Starburst cluster behind the scenes that can keep up with the performance you need. And that's really about it. I know we're running up in time here, and I wanted to make sure we had some time for questions. So just a simple demo there, but again, wanted to show you how simple it is to connect. Again, when you have Starburst Enterprise as a connector, pretty simple to connect to. Just provide basic connection information, and then you're off to the races. All right, so
floor is open for questions.
Hey, Ben, I have a question. So because it's coming in at the data source level, are there any restrictions on any of the Tableau calculations that could be done?
Not that I know of. I haven't explored extensively, all the different calculations that you can do. But from what I understand, most of the calculations can be translated into SQL that Starburst can process, because we're processing ANSI SQL. So long as that Tableau function can produce ANSI SQL, we should be able to process it.
Gotcha. Cool. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sekou, are you thinking of median? I think is one, like there's an aggregation that doesn't always work unless if it's live.
Yeah,
the kind of thing,
basically the difference between like live and extracts and some of the limitations that come with that.
Sure.
But since it's coming as a flat file, I could imagine you still can do your LODs or any type of advanced calculations fine, because it's coming in your semantic layer.
Right. Michael?
Can I ask some really stupid questions? We kind of do this already because this kind of stuff wasn't available back in 2011 at Fulton County, okay?
Yeah.
And what we've done is we've built a robot that does this for us, okay? One curious question is there write back from Tableau back to Starburst?
That would vary on data source. So not all of the connectors that we have support write back, but like the Hive connector does, I believe the Postgres does. So it really depends on what you're trying to write back to. Most of our customers will write back to a Hive-based data source like S3, Azure Data Lake Storage or whatnot, because they're usually joining large amounts of data and they don't want to incur the additional costs in like a more expensive system, so they'll write back to there. So yeah, you should be able to, because our connector basically supports that.
And then my next really dumb question, which goes to how we did things, is does Starburst support Selenium?
Selenium. I'm not familiar.
Selenium
with
is
that.
a bot that helps you clean web pages. We use it for
Oh.
vendor data here, and then we have to write it.
I'm not aware of any direct integrations, but does Selenium support what kind of connection points?
Selenium is usually written in Python or Java.
Oh,
you have
okay.
to schedule it as a task in like
Yeah.
Task Manager, and it runs normally on a computer.
Okay, and then so you'd have that run through and do some scrubbing on your data, basically?
It basically grabs it from a website. So as long as your your server can pretend to, basically what I'm asking is, can you have your Starburst server pretend to be a desktop computer? Just to pull data.
Just to pull data.
But without the interface of a desktop computer. Same interactivity on the back.
Right. So could it pull data? I mean, it would depend, I guess. I haven't thought about that access pattern yet. I mean, we do have a Python client that you can use that will allow you to connect to the command line and issue queries against the
Then that should be
Trino
sufficient.
cluster.
Yeah, that should be sufficient.
Okay. We also have a Go-based client. I think we're built on Java, so I imagine that there's a Java client out there, but I think that's more of the open source community. You could leverage it with Starburst as well, but that's more open source community supported. But the Python one is in our documentation and something that we work with.
So it sounds like it's something a customer would need to do, but it sounds like it is supported then.
Yeah, they would have to implement the code themselves, but they could at least get the drivers from us and then the client as well.
Yeah. Most of the time you use it when your data source is in a table, but a web page.
Oh, fair enough.
Which it's truly unstructured data. That's what
Right.
we're talking about. Like
Right.
the true stuff, you know.
Everyone give a virtual round of applause for Ben and his presentation. Also, thank you for the questions.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I learned that I have a lot more to learn in general. Lots of proper nouns to go Google later. But I definitely learned a lot. So thank you for that and the demo.
Absolutely.
We're now at the point in our meeting where we're going to open the floor more broadly. Jim, I think you've got a PowerPoint to talk about upcoming things. Also, if you have job opportunities you want to share or you're looking, this is also the time to light up the chat and put links in there. Let's see, Jim, I'm ready to share the slides when you're ready to speak to them. So you're on mute though, so might need to swap to that. Let's see, you think I got it? You all see my screen? Awesome. Jim, are you off mute? Yeah, you're still muted, bro.
I am
Awesome.
now.
Welcome.
Very good. Hey, great presentation, Ben. Some real quick announcements. The first one's the biggie. If you had not heard, if you live under a rock or something and had not heard, the TC22 is going to be live in Las Vegas. And the dates for that are May 17th through 19th. Okay. I am going to be there. I don't know how many other people are going to be there, but there's going to be a crowd. I don't know when the actual registration period will open, but I'm told that it's going to be like mid-March when you can actually register for the meeting. But if you want to put it on your calendar and start looking at dates and timing to go on out there, May 17th through 19th will be the actual convention dates. Second thing, some of you were at our first newbies group that was in January, and we had a wonderful time there. There were about 750 people there, 800 people there. And the second meeting is coming up on March the 10th. You can sign up for that meeting right now. There's the link to the meeting itself. Klaus and I co-lead the group. Klaus is in Germany. Klaus Schulte is in Germany, and every month or they're about 6 to 8 weeks apart. Every meeting we do a how does that work type session, and we're going to be talking about discrete and continuous variables and what are they and when you use each one of them. And then Steve Wexler. And if you don't know Steve, Steve is a Hall of Fame Zen master. Steve is, he's very exciting to listen to. He's going to do a presentation on making your visuals more exciting. And I think it's called, it's not the data that's boring, it's your viz that's boring. And if you know Steve, there's probably a few expletives in there also. So do come out and sign up. I looked this morning, there's, quite honestly, there's about 700 people signed up right now for the event. So, but plenty of room because it's going to be a webinar. One additional thing I don't have on here, Klaus is doing a presentation tomorrow. The analytics user group is tomorrow. It's at 11 o'clock Nashville time, noon Eastern time, 5 o'clock in London. And Klaus is doing a presentation. He's doing it on Sankey diagrams. But if you're not a member of the analytics user group, it's something you might want to consider. It's those guys are great. Always good topics. Job seekers. First of all, Tableau is hiring. Tableau is always hiring, but Tableau is hiring. Go out to their website at tableau.com about careers. And they're hiring all over the country and in different parts of the world also. I just got pinged by something today that JLL is hiring again. And JLL hires a lot of people with Tableau experience. So if you've got Tableau experience, you're looking for an opportunity, you might want to consider JLL as a resting home. Is there anybody else in the room that has a job opportunity that they want to make everybody aware of? Just put up a hand or unmute your mic and shout at us.
I see you, Michael. I will just say briefly, I put a couple of links for NavaHealth in the chat. I would love the opportunity to work with you. And Michael, if you want to come off mute and tell us about yours.
So this is a position they just posted, but I don't think they posted it correctly, but at least want to make you guys aware of it, just in case when it posts next week properly or the week after. But occasionally we have internship positions at Fulton County that require Tableau, and they're always listed as management policy analyst, okay? This is essentially a person that works with us to either be somebody who organizes and then gets the dashboard information for Tableau developers like myself, or it's somebody who actually makes Tableau dashboards, depending on their experience level with Tableau. And so I know it closes tonight. They should have extended it. If they haven't already extended it, oh, they did, thank God. They finally extended it properly because it was closing tonight and they're supposed to extend it to the end of the month. But if you're kind of interested in working for the government with Tableau and doing project management related to that, and working with human resources with Tableau, then this would be a job, okay? But it's really geared toward people who are either currently taking courses at the college level, either at the undergraduate or graduate level, because it is an internship position, okay?
Okay, Michael, we need to open the floor for others now. We're 2 minutes past,
Okay.
so if you've got a hard stop, everyone feel free to drop.
Sorry. Just
But if you're also wanting to stick around and hear more about other opportunities, you are welcome to stay.
Hey, Nick, why don't we have Sekou? Sekou,
Yep.
unmute yourself and say hello to everybody. Introduce yourself. Sekou Tyler is joining the leadership team. Did he already leave?
No, I think he muted and unmuted, and maybe he's, yeah. But you all got to see him. He asked a couple of questions.
Yeah.
The newest addition to
Welcome
our membership
aboard.
team. We're glad to have him.
Sorry.
There he is. Oh, 2 for 1 deal.
Yeah. I have a crying kid right now. So say hey, everybody.
Okay.
They can.
Okay, hi. Hi. Okay,
So
welcome
I'm here.
aboard.
I'm still here. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.